Well, John, it's been a while, my friend, and thanks for taking the time to jump on. I know you're a little under the weather there, but it's been a while. I've always been a fan not only of your work but of your spirit, and so man, I'm just thankful for you to jump on here and share some ideas with us.
Well, no, happy to do it, Steve. Yeah, we've been friends a long time, so
Yeah, let me.
whatever I can do to help, let me know.
Oh yeah, always, man. Well, let's just. I'm just going to jump in and I guess give me an everyone to hear. I'll preface this in the intro for you, but people that don't know your history. You've got a pretty long background, obviously in the industry that you're in, but also dealing with the associations. So why don't you just, if you can give us kind of the Cliff Notes version of John Murphy's professional life.
All right. Well, I work in the kitchen and bath industry. I've roughly 30 years now. From the showroom side, meeting with clients. That would be the end user, the contractor, the architect, interior designer, whoever, and specifying out whole houses, usually on the luxury side, on the high end. And those are more challenging projects, and co-workers would prefer that I dealt with that rather than themselves. So that is where I got my start. Feel very comfortable and passionate about the products. I just got lucky that I ended up in a job or a field that I really love, and I've never had that sinking feeling on a Sunday night. Good God, I've got to go to work on Monday. I've always been like, hey, I'll get going, let's go, and so it's just been a joy for me to be in the kitchen and bath industry for all these years, even, with the challenges of difficult clients or difficult manufacturer deliveries and so on. I love just about every moment of it. So I went from then to, from time to time in the industry, the showroom person is overlooked as being important. It's funny. I read today a wonderful guy in our industry, Martin Seawy, had a note posted on LinkedIn, and then it went into Facebook on Modinus on her website. And anyway, his question was, are we finding that manufacturers are not doing enough research in what the end user is looking for? Mm-hmm. And I've always preached that who would know better of what the consumer is looking for than those that meet with the consumer as they come through the door. The consumer, I refer to them as Bob and Betty Got Rocks. Bob and Betty, when Bob and Betty Got Rocks comes through the door, they say, "Do you have this, 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 and this?" And we say, "Well, we do have something similar," or but we're the ones who really know when the rubber meets the road, what people are looking for. The average showroom person works on 3 full house specifications a day.
Wow.
And yeah. And, with the ensemble cast, including plumbers and inside sales and so on, each project is usually up to 10 people are involved in the process of specification. Everything has to be on it. And I've always preached that we are a profession. We do engineering for steam units. We do measurements for shower doors. We do anything that needs to be done, we can do related to kitchen and bath, including, I cannot impress this enough, how many people come to us to learn how to install items. We know how to do it. And so anyway, to skip a little bit ahead, one of these days, I managed 5 showrooms. Most of them were Kohler specific showrooms for the Kohler company. And basically I had an abusive situation with a rep, and this rep asked me to plan a dinner meeting, a cocktail hour, etc., to introduce new products. I said I would do that. And, we're talking about fewer than 50 people. And so I put it together. I got all the approvals through the head office, their office, and it was a great meeting. And in the end, at the end of the meeting, I just wanted, Steve, who do you think got the bill for this dinner meeting? Who got the bill?
I'm guessing it was you.
I got the bill. I got it. They handed it to me, and I said, "Oh, no, 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 no! You give that to so and so." And then so and so says, "Oh, no, no, we're defecting product to offset the cost of this. You go ahead and pay it, John." Now here I am, a showroom manager, multiple showroom, 5 showroom, and I pick up this bill, and you can only imagine how much it was. I have American Express, but I didn't have my card with me. I had to call my wife. She had to drive the card over and use our American Express card to take care of this bill. Anyway, it really upset me. It really, really upset me. And I said, you know what? My wife and I, we have the financial means to do this, but maybe not all showroom managers would have been able to come up with many thousands of dollars at the snap of the fingers. I said, this is abuse. I don't want this to happen again. And thus I started the association. I said, this is not going to happen again, because there is power in numbers. And I was the lonely character, first member of an association, which we, at that time, of course, weren't a 501c3 nonprofit, but we are now. And we have now grown through multiple groups. I have over 30,000 members, repeat, 30,000 members.
Wow.
That are online. That's correct. These are just online. My database is enormous for kitchen and bath specific, kitchen, bath, plumbing, mechanical specific. And so if you wanted to know the genesis of the associations, that's what it is right there. Somebody ticked me off, and I said, this isn't going to happen to somebody else. That gentleman no longer has a job. He's no longer even in the industry. And I think that fair is fair. Given fair warning, if somebody had said, hey, John, you're going to pick up the bill on this, it wouldn't have been such a big deal. I still would have thought that it was not right, but I would have done it because my company, snap of the fingers, reimburse, no problem. But anyway, that's in a nutshell of how and why I formed the association.
Yeah, I love it.
Yep.
And it's interesting because, I mean, I remember, when I first met you, you were really just kind of getting off the ground with it. And I think as I've talked to more and more people, in the association world, it always has that kind of that origin story. There's always kind of a challenge where you think to yourself, man, there's probably other people in my situation that have this same issue. And obviously then, to your point, there's power in numbers. Things evolve. But I think the unique thing that I've found, because, Jen, I mean, for me, my career, I deal with a lot of business people, and then usually it's a hybrid person that is in business but also runs an association. And this is just my opinion, this is not a factual science-backed study by any stretch, but people like you, like the folks that I talk to from the association area that have started these things, there's just a different kind of like, I don't know if demeanor is the right word, but there's just this level of selflessness where, you see a problem and you're like, man, okay, I'm a busy person. I have a job. I mean, even what you're running national accounts for a profession. And then you're going to take the time to actually start up an association to help other people in your industry and in your position solve problems. Like man, it's a special kind of person that can do that and actually do it well and get it to the point that you have got it. So kudos to you, John.
I've had some really good help, Steve. Patricia Linnaeus, who is right there in your area in Chicago, she has just been outstanding. She edits our e-newsletter. She gives wonderful advice. Anything she can do for us. And she's a former editor of Supply House Times.
Yeah.
Just a great lady. And Mr. Steve Conine, a good friend of mine in the industry, always ready to help. And people, just expert advice that I get from people like Jody Rosenberg and Mike Straw. I mean, from one end of this country to the other, I'll tell you, I can count on really quality people who do care. And what's so funny is that, I sound like a nut when I say I love my job. I love working in the kitchen. But these other people are just as crazy as I am. They all love it as well. And it shows. I mean, and when you have that in common, and it's actually a surprise. I remember being out in, I don't know, I think it was Scottsdale, and Jody Rosenberg came up to me, and we were talking, and he just said, "John, I love this industry." It's like the first time I heard anyone say it with that passion is that he really loves it too.
Yeah.
I'm not alone. So
that's interesting.
Together, and in numbers, we do make some changes. I mean, it's great to be able to change $1 billion revenue corporations nomenclature because, well, you convince them, number one, that they'll get more sales if they make their nomenclature, their numbering system, more showroom friendly. Okay, so this is just an example. I won't name manufacturers, but I'll just say there was a fiberglass gel coat manufacturer that had a very complicated nomenclature that worked beautifully for everybody on the factory side. Everybody knew by that number, those digits and letters and combinations that had no logic, by the way, to anyone other than the manufacturing side. They knew what they were, what they were doing, and they had it down to a real science on the manufacturing end. Meanwhile, on the showroom end, that was the last catalog that would come off of the shelf to show somebody because it was difficult and it was too cumbersome. This model number was so cumbersome that it wouldn't even fit in a lot of the database systems, as in creating numbers. I can give you major corporations, for example, like Ferguson, a wonderful company, but it was impossible to utilize this manufacturer's nomenclature in the Ferguson software. You can imagine when you all of a sudden you have 3,000 locations across the Americas, and they can't even use your product because the number system. So anyway, through many meetings, conversations, and some open-mindedness, we were able to reduce this cumbersome nomenclature down to 4 digits plus a couple of letters. And it worked out really well, and sales increased, and it's to this moment a very successful company in that business. So that's an example of one of the things that we do in an association that works both for manufacturer, and manufacturer would really not know unless we gave them this feedback. And I can tell you, I preached it from mountaintops to this manufacturer before the association. And they would actually agree, but there was no change. But when you get 1,000 people behind you, and then 2,000, 4,000, etc. Anyway, there is power in numbers, and that's what I utilize, or I try to anyway. In many cases, there are manufacturers that understand, especially on the social media side. Some of them are very aware, and then others are not. But Steve, you understand, I know you do, just from, our interaction over the years, that if I have 30,000 industry specific members, all right, that's enough to move a mountain. Okay. Now let's just give an example. Elton John has 1 million people in a let's say a Facebook group that really appreciate his music.
Yeah.
But these are an unorganized ragtag bunch of people, except for the fact that they all really must appreciate Elton John's music or what have you. Okay, they don't really have that same amount of push as 30,000 industry specific, especially an industry as small as our industry. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting to the way you describe it. There is, you have an association of people, like the value that like the ripple effect that that can have. You know, when there's one voice saying, "Hey, there's a problem here. We're not able to sell this. The nomenclature is off." But when you actually get a large group of organized people that say, "Hey, you know, we can make a big impact on you if you do this," you're exactly right. I mean, you have the power to exact change in a very positive way. And of course, it takes somebody organizing, you know, that voice and delivering it. And that's obviously been, you know, what you have made a career out of doing. I guess I'd ask you, like, how have you organized that voice, John? Like, as you grew from yourself to, you know, this broad, thousands and thousands, you have 30,000 people involved. Like, how have you kind of brought all of that together? I mean, was there specific intentional things that you did to make that happen, or was it, you know, just kind of organic in terms of the way it grew?
There was a lot of organic. I had a basic outline. I never dreamed, by the way, never dreamed it would have the numbers that we have, but I had an outline that I worked and modified. So yeah, organic certainly, but um, it's so funny that you know, I take a look at where we are at today as an association, and I look at that and I think, well, honestly, this is so much different than what I had envisioned. This is really cumbersome, and it you know, with these numbers, I should be able to affect more change, and I should dedicate more time. But it is not something that I do full time. But you know, I have to feed the children, so to speak, and put shoes on their feet, and so I do other things too. But yeah, it's something to behold. Just looking back and saying, well, I had an idea. It's kind of like, when you build a house. In my case, my wife and we built a house at the lake in Maine. I live in Maine and in Florida both. So in the summertime in Maine and in Florida in the winter, and you know, I drew the blueprints for a house at the lake here, and then to see it come together within a year exactly as you've drawn it, it's pretty cool. And very, you know, you can see from the abstract to the tangible, and everywhere in between. It's just quite a process. And to look back at this association, I guess I didn't have that end picture of
Huh.
of really. I mean, sometimes it'll dawn on me that, hey, we really do have some ability here. Maybe we should be exercising this a little more. And but you don't want to appear to be a bully either. And sometimes, so I found myself many times, instead of commenting in public, I refrain from it because I don't want to upset people. Because all of a sudden, hey, there are members that you have to be aware of and their opinions, and then there are associate members, manufacturers, and reps, and we just have a really broad membership that encompasses almost every area of the kitchen and bath and the plumbing industry. It's pretty cool. But so you'll note that I remain fairly neutral, certainly on politics and religion, and you know. But you do, you just, when you don't intend on going into something along these lines. You know, my formal education is in Bible, is in psychology, and in law. I never expected to be doing this, but
I'm surprised. That seems like the exact formula for people in the kitchen and bath industry, John.
yeah, sure, sure.
It's interesting because, you know, and even when I first met you years ago, I think it was at the Kitchen and Bath Association show or one of those shows. But it's interesting how you have these associations that serve, you know, in theory, the people in those groups. And I'm not knocking anybody here because every association, I mean, they do a great job. But I'm always fascinated how, like, you really found a need that wasn't being served, even though some of those organizations are gargantuan. And as you and I know, I mean, I spent a lot of time in that industry, just with clients of my own, and it's like the showroom professional, the distributors out there. That's the lifeblood that's keeping a lot of that alive, quite frankly. And for you to kind of identify, like, man, you know what? This critical component of the industry at large, really our voice is not being heard the way that it should be. I mean, did you ever think of like approaching one of those larger groups and saying, hey, we need a bigger voice, we need you guys to give us a bigger voice? Or was it always like, you know what, I'm just going to charter this on my own?
I definitely have considered that, and I've forged what I hope are friendships. There are people that I am very, very fond of, more than they would ever even know, that are in the association, buying groups and so on. But I never really felt that. I'm just not sure how much value add I have for them when I already, for example, do they? I don't know if they can effectively poll like I can,
Yeah.
but other than that, they do have some members, showroom members for the most part. I mean, it started with the wonderful Bob and Linda Hoff, and at LPG, and now with AD, and of course with Forte.
Yep.
I'd love to make some progress with Forte, but wow, they are tight-lipped people. They really are. They're good people. I know that much, but they're a little on the esoteric side as far as I just don't know anything about them, and I think that's by design. I really do. Their members are very hush hush, but I would be open to talking with people there. I just haven't knocked on their doors or anything. But
yeah, well, you've done I mean, it almost serves you better to have the level of focus that you have, because the challenges that you guys are addressing as an organization are so specific to the members inside your organization, that I mean, it makes more sense for sure. And it's interesting the way that you've gone about it is very much out of a service kind of mentality. I mean, and that's why I think it's just unique, John. It's guys like you that do things like that without any kind of backdoor hope of, some windfall at the end of it. Like, you really created something to serve other people in your same position. And I think that's really why, you've probably grown so fast, and why people see so much value in the organization and your leadership, I would imagine.
Well, thank you for saying that, Steve. But it was a necessary thing to have. I just happened to be the one to think of it maybe at that time, But it was definitely necessary, and is and continues to be, probably will be for a long time. And I just don't see a robot taking our place. There are too many variables in every project that cannot be answered. There are questions that have to be asked. I'll just give you an example. I don't want to bore you to death, but let's just say we were to order a black one-piece Kohler toilet that retails for $1,500. It comes in what's called a 12-inch rough end. It means you've got to be 12 inches to the center of the flange from the finished drywall out. Okay. Now, let's say you want to bypass the showroom and go direct to the manufacturer to buy this toilet. Nobody asks you along the line. The toilet arrives, and actually it turns out you needed what's called a 10-inch rough. And now you have a $1,500 black Kohler toilet that is good to nobody but you, or that will not fit. I mean, the showroom professional asks these questions. That's what it's about. And a homeowner is going to say, oh, of course, I got a 12-inch rough. They don't know what a 12-inch rough is, but they say, oh, it's just normal, just that. But because the plumber never said to them, oh, by the way, there's a beam in the way, and we had a rough end, you're going to have to, it's just about communication and asking questions. And that's so the showroom professionals will be around for a long, long time. And boy, I'll tell you, we are educating them. We're working together right now on an initiative that is being partially funded by a couple of manufacturers. Pardon me. And I'm excited about it. We haven't announced it, but it's about education. Now, this is nowhere near as formal as NKBA. I mean, the NKBA goes out to the job site. They do field measure. I mean, that's far, far more involved than what we're doing. We're doing an intermediary step somewhere between the showroom and the people in the showroom that really don't leave the showroom, and somewhere between the NKBA that they go out and they measure and they double check field, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is a middle ground, and this initiative is exciting. And I have the manufacturers participating in two areas, both financially, thankfully, because I've been self-funding for a long, long time. And but also it gives an opportunity to say, hey, look, I'll just use Growy as an example. They are not participating, but I'm using them as an example. They have what's called an inline pressure balance, a remote pressure balance valve, which makes a hot and a cold handle, a separate yoke handle, pressure balanced. It's an opportunity for them to put in a test form. Hey, did you know, okay, what's the solution here? You've got a hot handle, you've got a cold handle, and you don't want to end up being scalded with hot water if somebody flushes the toilet, because the cold water is distracted to the toilet, leaving just the hot water. What's the solution? And the solution is this: A, B, C, D, and it happens to be a inline pressure balance remote valve by Growy. So it's an opportunity for the manufacturer to promote certain products as well, unique products like that. And so that I'm excited about that testing initiative, and it will continue to educate our people, hopefully. And but I would work with the NKVA in conjunction with that. But they're a monster. Ooh, They are big. They're big, and they're, for the most part, I think they're good people. They've never reached out to me, never once. I will say that. I find that strange, but they may never have heard of me either. So I don't go out there promoting John Murphy or our group. We're pretty quiet in this because of being self-funded.
Yeah.
If I had ability, I'd probably go out and buy billboards or whatever. But I don't do that. So instead, it is organic from membership, and it's pretty cool because Steve, another thing I'm so proud of is I worked so hard. You'd think that I was a recruiter, putting people to work. I'm not a recruiter. I've never received a commission from anybody on finding, but man, I'm not saying it's daily, but I will say this: weekly, I'm matching candidates with jobs all over the place. And I find that fun when I can put some of our members to work, and it's just great. It happens to be easy right now because we're in demand, but I'm always reposting and posting positions, and it's amazing the thank you notes that I get, and that does bring joy to me. I probably should have been a recruiter. But,
well, you're a master connector, that's for sure. I mean,
I enjoy that very much. The social side, I do.
Yeah, it's as I look back on kind of the industry that you're in, it's funny because I remember telling people, I was on a panel once, and it was about when social media was just really getting going. And I remember telling guys, you're not looking at this correctly. Like the people in this room are not your competitor. Amazon is your competitor, right? And I believe that. And I still think it's a big problem, but it's interesting. And you brought this up a minute ago. Like, there's certain industries that, as things have evolved, really do appear to be fairly immune to that level of automation. So if I look at companies like Warby Parker, for example, eyeglasses, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you guys do, there's just certain industries where people want to see and touch and feel it. Now, your challenge, obviously, from the showroom side is, while that is true, you still run the risk of people, coming in, looking, touching, feeling, and then going and trying to find it cheaper, which I think that's more, again, that we don't have time for that conversation, but that's more of a
Right.
manufacturing issue in terms of the agreements and the level of respect that they show to guys on the floor. But
Yep.
nonetheless, it's an industry that is definitely a tactile kind of touch and feel type of a deal for sure.
Agreed. For sure. Yep.
Let me ask you. I know I touched on this before we started recording, but you've been through a lot, my man. And so I wanted to just ask you about it because it's very rare that you get to speak to someone that has been through what you have been through. So we were talking earlier, you had a liver transplant and you were
Yes.
literally in the hospital for over 200 days. So
Yeah.
I got to apologize for my, I don't know, like I don't want to be, it's just so amazing to me. And I don't know how to ask it without sounding like somebody from the outside that obviously has zero idea what that is like. But like what coming out of that, John, like was there any change? Like, do you see things like the bigger picture different than you did before?
Well, it is certainly a magnified. I've had parents that had taught me from as long ago as I can remember that every moment counts, and that um, to be positive whenever possible. And my disease was called NASH, which is non-alcoholic cirrhosis hepatitis.
Hmm.
So I've never been a drinker. You've never seen me take a drink of alcohol ever. But of course, when you hear liver disease, in my case, it was I was diagnosed, Steve, believe it or not. I went to work on Friday at 10:30. I decided this isn't working. I've got to go. And one of the gals who worked for me, she said, John, you don't look very good. She said, if I were you, I'd go to the hospital. And so that's what I did. The next thing I know, I'm in the hospital, but I'm laying in a hospital bed and it's the next day. That's the next thing I know.
Oh,
And
wow.
my family and friends are there, and even my regular doctor. My regular doctor is there in the hospital. I was like, that freaks me out. And he says, I'm so sorry. I missed this. I missed it. And I apologize. And so I had what is called end stage liver disease.
Wow.
There's no cure for it, Steve. And so I said, well, look, it's inherited. We're not a family of drinkers. We knew we had this gene, but he missed it. And that's the way it is. And I have family members who are doctors. I have a triple board certified brother and triple board, 3 specialists. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. So I talked to him in private and I said, could you have missed this? He said, not very likely, but he said, there is a possibility. So I forgave my doctor. I said, okay, that's it. So what's the thing? So the only thing that can save you is a full liver transplant, not a partial, but a full, because my liver was dead.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Friday, 10 o'clock, I'm at work. The next day, about 10 o'clock, I wake up and everybody's in my room, and it's the death sentence, right? So anyway, long story short, I had a wonderful gastroenterologist who recommended that I go to Leahy Clinic in Massachusetts, and which is a short drive, really. It's less than 2 hours from me in Portland. And I started going there. I got on a list to become on a list. So you first try to qualify to be put on a list, and so you're on that list for some time. And then after I got on the list, the transplant list, the actual one, it was a year and a half from that point. And then praise God above, and I mean that fully. Praise God, I wouldn't be here. And this is the hardest part, Steve. You think, John, 200 nights in the hospital, that's pretty bad, right? The hardest part is knowing that a man is not going home to his wife and 2 children
Mm-hmm.
because he went to work one day. he had a heart event, and he was brought to the clinic to Leahy, and his wife was called, and she came in, and they asked if she would be willing to donate his organs. And Steve, in her grief, I mean, he left, never came home. She was at the hospital, and in her grief, she says, "Yes, I'll donate his liver so John can live." Isn't that amazing? So his liver was the right blood type, it was the right size, and it was the right shape.
Wow.
And my skin color was nearly the color of a banana by that time. In fact, they had given me 4 days to live. We had called my parents to fly up from Florida. They were on their way, and to say goodbye to me. I had 4 days. And anyway, long story short, here I am talking with you, Steve, having not felt this good in 30 years. So you figure it out. It's from God. So
Man.
I'm glad you asked about it, because I do. I give my testimony in churches all over, and I have a lot of faith. And it was those people, I'm sure, who prayed for me that and God answered prayer. So, you know,
And how rare.
Never.
It's just such a rare thing. First of all, man, that's heavy duty stuff. Like those 4 days, like when you get news like that, what and what are you thinking? Like, and the reason I ask this is because, like, every time I talk to you, and I've had friends pass, and every time something like that happens, it puts things very clearly into perspective. And then the next day comes, and you get busy, and it goes away. And I always wonder, like, when you are given that kind of news, like, is there a moment of reflection where man, I don't know how to ask this without sounding like an ass, but like, do you look back and think like, man, I wish I had done something different, or I'm proud of what I did, or man, I'm leaving this adventure unattended to? I mean, what is that thought process like?
Well, I did. I reflected back on, I wish I'd done more. I wish I had not wasted so much time in different areas and different things, mostly in ex-wives,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was never discouraged. I saw people even in the last days there so much worse off than me. Honestly, I really didn't. I never allowed anyone to come into my room and cry ever. It wasn't permitted. I didn't. There was no pity parties, and it's not because I was in denial, but I did not want pity. I don't want any of that. You know what? If I had passed 2 years ago, I would have said then, as I still say now, I lived a full life, a great life, a blessed life. All of those things, I had done things that, I mean, just dining with presidents of the United States, and working with some of the most famous people in the world. And when I say dining with presidents, I mean, because the Bush family are right here, and not next door, but I mean the next town over, and we've been friends for a long, long time with all the Bush family, and going there for social events and so on, and picking up the phone and calling my friend Herb Kohler,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to. And so I just count myself as having had a blessed life up until that point. And I continue to. I do such amazing. I just came back from 2 weeks in China and Hong Kong, and going back in October, I was a speaker at a kitchen and bath convention there. I had someone to interpret what I was saying. I don't speak in either of the Chinese languages, so, but still, it's an honor to be asked to speak at a convention of a 4-day convention, over 1 million people going through. No, I never imagined in my life that I would do such a thing. And my life has been just that way. And so I felt like I had had a very good life. You know, I had regrets just mostly about wasted time.
Yeah.
You know, live every moment. And there's a atmosphere right now politically that is so stupid to me. And I'm not saying I'm above it, because this is, I'll give you my opinion. They all these politicians, every one of them stink. We looked into, for this past election, I'm sorry if I offend you or anyone,
No.
but we looked into the bottom of a 55-gallon drum, and we saw Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. That's who we had to choose from at the bottom of that barrel. Whose fault is it? Whose fault is that, right? So, I mean, I don't waste a moment, you know, on this back and forth like I'm going to convince somebody that one candidate is better than another, or that I'm not delusional. Hey, I'll tell you two funny things. One cousin, senior FBI agent, liaison between the FBI and CIA, was right next door to Oliver North's office. Hold on. Another cousin who was in the NSA, we have no idea what he does. He's never once said it. Never. I couldn't even guess. I have no idea. But what they both agree on is, if a politician's lips are moving, they are lying. Yes, they both agree on that. And so why would you waste any time bantering back and forth when you know you're looking into the bottom of that barrel and it's a filthy, scummy 55-gallon drum? I'm not going to waste my time, but I won't vote for a candidate in the future that isn't worthy. I mean, the lesser of evils, honestly, that's what we have to, that's what we're choosing, is the lesser of evils.
Yeah.
Why don't you, Steve, why don't you consider running? An honest man? Okay, so that's probably why. You're too honest. You're too honest.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's a special breed. There's zero question about that. And I gotta tell you, you know, I have friends that are, you know, just like everybody. They love to talk about it and get into it. And I'm kind of the same way. Like, I don't have time for it. I just have, I have better things to do, and, you know, try to make a positive impact. I mean, discussing the nuances of lunacy is just not the kind of time that I feel like spending, you know?
No, but talking about wasting of time, just get some new people in there and do something good for your children, your grandchildren, and now your great grandchildren, by the way. So
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It is crazy. Well, John,
yeah.
man, I appreciate you so much. And I think, you know, one thing when I talk to guys like you, I don't know if it's just in the DNA or what it is, but, you know, you're not trying to be anything other than you are. And, you know, fortunate for the people that surround you and the folks in your association, et cetera, you know, there are people like you out there that, you know, focus so much on giving of themselves without expecting anything in return. You know, it makes a tremendous difference. And yeah, man, I just applaud you. I'm happy to be a small part of the story. And, you know, as I've kind of gotten more involved in associations and, you know, groups like that, it's just, there's a level of pride in kind of doing what I can to move that along for people like you, because yeah, just a special bunch, and you're doing great work, my man.
Let me know if I can help you, Steve. And I didn't ask anything about you, but boy, I hope you're healthy and that your family is good and well. And
Yeah, all the right things are intact, you know, all the right things are intact. So it's yeah, no complaints, but thanks for doing this. I appreciate
you
it. And
bet.